I'm Oscar and I'm living with Pompe disease. I try not to let it get in the way of my daily life too much. I recently got married and I live here with my wife Sarah. I feel I've been very lucky as I was diagnosed quite early on in my life at the age of 19, and so the damage to my body was limited quite early on. However, it still has certain difficulties. So I sleep with a CPAP machine at night, which helps with breathing. It's, yes, I was quite embarrassed when I first was set up with my CPAP machine because I didn't want my fiancée at the time to, to see it, but she's been fantastic and doesn't mind at all. I love to travel and explore new parts of the world. It's a real passion of mine. However, Pompe does get in the way occasionally. I notice it more on holidays with friends. I can't keep up with them really. I have to maybe go back and have an afternoon off and go and sleep, whereas they continue to explore or go out. I love to go on holiday. When I do, I have to pack an extra bag, which is the CPAP bag, and it's about this big and you put it over your shoulder. It looks a bit like a man bag. I always get stopped at security and they open it up and like, what the hell's this? I would say I'm living with a disability. It certainly limits my life in certain ways. I struggle to bend down and pick things up off the floor. Stairs are a real challenge, walking long distances or standing for any period of time really, but it is manageable. I tend to drive probably more than most people would. If it's a short walk, I would drive. Disability can have a negative connotation. I think in this day and age, especially in the workplace, it's much more recognised, and personally I don't like to advertise the fact I have a disability. I will try to act in the way other people do. Often if something's a bit harder for myself, I will push myself to do it anyway, or take an alternate route but give a different reason for why I'm not walking to the pub for lunch with my co-workers, for example. I think it shouldn't be like that. We should be open about disabilities. I portray my disability as very invisible. I'm quite a private person. I like to keep it to myself, and so often people treat me like I can do anything that anyone else can do. My diagnosis was very early, at the age of 19. I would definitely have benefited from an earlier diagnosis if I had, for example, been on Myozyme from birth. My diagnosis journey was quite long. It was about 11 years. Start from 7 or 8, where my mother noticed that I couldn't keep up with my siblings, and so she started keeping me at home instead of subjecting me to long walk. I say subjecting, it's like like a torture, but she kept taking me to different hospitals, and when a doctor was obviously getting nowhere, she would switch, and even went down the private medical route for a little bit. At this point I had just finished my A-level exams and had failed the entire lot. That was a clear warning sign, and so the doctors were really trying to figure out what was wrong. I was expecting miracles after the first treatment, but obviously it's not like that. It's a slow increase in functionality or improvement in tiredness and fatigue. But then as the weeks moved on, I started to become more focused, less lethargic during the day. I started to think about what I wanted to do with my life, and and so I ended up enrolling in college to retake some of my A-levels and try and get a place at university. And when after 6 months of treatment, I found that I was able to keep up on the most part academically. I was able to obtain decent enough grades to get a place at Manchester Metropolitan University, which was a fantastic improvement and completely uncomparable to how I was before treatment. There was no way I was able to progress through university and secure a financial mathematics degree. The turning point for me was when I started enzyme replacement therapy. It really helped me to turn my life around and get back on track. But I think it would be good if doctors were more educated on Pompe disease and more aware of it. It would definitely make a direct impact in a lot of people's lives. If I had been diagnosed earlier, I remember going in and coming out and feeling shell-shocked and not really much of what was said. I remember a scientific explanation of Pompe disease that mostly going over my head. When I googled Pompe disease for the first time, I saw all the horror stories straight away and pictures of people in wheelchairs, and it was very frightening to contemplate that you might end up like that. Or however, it doesn't tell you the Pompe success stories, so people who have Pompe and live with it and deal with the symptoms. I was first diagnosed by a neurologist in Glasgow. We were living in Scotland at the time, in Helensburgh, a town near Glasgow. Unfortunately, the enzyme replacement therapy treatment was not available in Scotland at the time, so that was to immediately pack up and move down to England where the treatment was available. I've heard that a lower carb diet is beneficial to Pompe patients. The big problem I face is I absolutely love my food, and so weight loss has always been a bit of an issue for me. With a lower carb diet, that I have more energy, and obviously I have to be very careful about what I can do without damaging myself. Safe resistance training and lightweight training. What I've also tried is taking a protein shake half an hour to 45 minutes before I do a session of resistance training. I found this really increases my capability to do exercise and reduces the impact afterwards. I'm hopeful that one day, not in the too distant future, gene therapy will be available to everyone with Pompe disease. I understand that it wouldn't repair damage already done. However, it would stop any damage from being done further. So outside of your close family, it's very hard to explain the effects and really get across what actually you're facing every day. However, going to the first Pompe conference, I was able to talk to 20 other people with Pompe disease, and I found that I instantly had a lot of things in common. Their struggles were the same as my struggles, and they'd faced the same issues that I have. A lot of us were quite similar as well. There's a great determination shared between Pompe patients who just a determination to face what they are facing. I feel that family support has been absolutely instrumental in becoming the person that I am today and achieving the things that I've achieved. When I went through my diagnosis, it was quite a low point in my life, but my family were always there to pick me up and tell me it's not the end of the world and you can do it, push on through. And my wife, absolutely fantastic. She supports me in every aspect of my life, and she's very, very sympathetic and caring and empathetic towards my condition and very accepting of me. After a few years of dating and when we got engaged, my wife very kindly offered to administer the infusions herself, which has provided a lot of flexibility. We tend to work in the week and then maybe on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning just spend a few hours mixing and administering the enzyme replacement therapy, and it's very handy for when we go on holiday. We can do an infusion the day before we go, and then the day we come back keep up with everyone else and live an entirely normal life. I would like to be classed as able as opposed to disabled. I do make the best of the current situation I'm in and try to live my life to the full, and I don't let Pompe disease stop me in pursuing what I want to pursue and living a very full, fulfilling life.